How's it going, everyone? It's Marshall. Thank you very much for tuning into Thru Port Collective. This is a show we do every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And today, we're here with Tim Grogan and Cryss Smith, and we're going to talk about our musical heroes and how they influence us in our music. And we've got a few other topics too. But real quick, let's just go around and say what's going on. How you doing, Cryss? What's been going on with you, sir?
Yeah, it's been a busy week, but things are good. It's telling Tim I'm starting to feel a bit better, and so getting stuff done and working all that kind of stuff. I got a little bit of show and tell from things that I got this week in the mail. Maybe not super exciting, but one of these has got to be like a very important thing, but is a cable tester. And it's the kind of thing like you don't really want to spend money on, but it's a good thing to have around.
Oh, yeah,
So I
yeah.
mean, it's got even MIDI cable and XLR and quarter inch and all that kind of stuff. And I don't need a battery tester because I got a multimeter, but yeah, can check all those tip sleeve and tip ring sleeves.
What's the brand
cables.
on that?
Let's
Can you
see,
say?
M Test One maybe. I don't know if that might be the model.
Oh,
Let me see if it says it.
M.
I got it off of Amazon, but it was
Yeah,
kind of
cool.
one of those things like there's been all these little tools I've been picking up because they're so convenient. They make life so much easier, but you just never think to buy them while you're going on with your life. The other thing that I got, so one of the projects I've been working on was with Pulsar Modular and a really cool plugin called P565 Siren, which is kind of based on a Yuri 565, but it has like envelope controls and some saturation and all this kind of stuff that the original didn't have, and had a boutique envelope filter for guitar and bass called the Emma Discombobulator, and I ended up trading that a little while ago because I got the plug-in. But I came across another pedal for fairly cheap, and because it's got a dodgy foot switch, so I snapped it up for under $100, and it is the Electro Harmonix Qtron.
Oh man.
And this is kind of a cool pedal. It's I need to go back and look it up. From what memory tells me, like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, they got maybe it may have been Mike Beagle from Mutron, somebody involved to design the circuit, and hence Qtron. That it's kind of got the nod to the old Muton 3 envelope filter, which is the classic, envelope filter for keys or guitar and bass. And this one's pretty cool. It's a little more friendly to modern users, got more features. And this is the Plus version, which has an effects loop on here. So if you're like trying to run drive or some other effect, if the drive is before, it'll affect the dynamics of the signal, so you can't get it to the envelope follower to work as well. And if you don't want it afterwards, you can stick it in the loop so that the envelope follower still works. Plus, you can put other effects in the loop for some kind of crazy, unusual sounds. As a filter opens up, you hear the other effect come in. So I got to fix it. Works. I just got to fix the foot switch on it. But that was a fun little score this week. But yeah, that's about it for me.
That's really cool. Is that a when was that particular piece of gear like made?
This one is fairly recent. I mean, this actual pedal is probably less than 10 years old. The original Mutron 3, which it's inspired by, was from the 70s. So, like Stevie Wonder and guys like that would be using it. They had an older, bigger box version of this for some time, and then as guitarists all wanted stuff a lot smaller, they started shrinking stuff. So, yeah, it's a fairly recent pedal.
Fairly recent, but like modeled, obviously, yeah, like you said, like in a classic style.
Yeah, it's all analog circuit and yeah.
Very cool, man. And so, yeah, you haven't like even had a chance to goof with it yet.
Yeah, I played it really, for just a little bit to make sure that it was as described when I got it. So it does sound really cool, and I've played it with both guitar and bass. It's a great sound. Now, I mean, it's one of those things like it's just kind of gonna go in the drawer for, if I need it for a live performance, because I'll probably be using Siren. Siren's a lot more versatile than this is, so having it in plug-in form and use it on the computer is a lot easier than trying to get this dialed in. But for a live rig, this should work.
Yeah, never in the drawer, right? That's our mantra. Never in the drawer. Because, once it's in the drawer, like, it's gone and forgotten. It's like leaning up against the wall or something, yeah. Well, that's cool, man. That's cool.
Got a nice comment about your Moog One there, Cryss.
Oh, nice, yeah. It needs a brother, though, like your OB X8s.
Yes.
Oh, yes. It does. Oh man, those are perfect siblings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's happening with you, Tim?
I've been up to my usual shenanigans, I guess. And this past week, I've been. The difference would be, I guess, with my usual shenanigans would be, I've been working on this live show that went down last night. So Nashville has grown from being just a scene where it's songwriters in the round, people getting up, playing their guitars, delivering their songs, and maybe there's 4 or 5 of them, and they trade songs. Nashville has grown so quickly is really kind of the underscore here. But now we were able to do like a synth music in the round. Mm-hmm. So that was my gig last night. There were 6 of us, and I was on at 6 p.m. And I decided I would like to create a whole new rig for live, because the only other live gig I've done in this sort of sense has been using keyboards and kind of this rig over here in some form or fashion. But I decided, all right, I'm just going to create a rig specifically designed to take out with some modules, so Eurorack, KeyStep Pro, and Machine Plus, because Machine Plus can kind of drive the whole thing, which I thought was cool and doesn't require a laptop or anything. Well, anyway, long story short, when it came to my time to go on, nothing was happening. Like, literally, I had nothing. And just prior to me going on, everyone was sharing the same AC outlet, which I had concerns about, but didn't voice. I know better. But I didn't voice my concerns about that. And, of course, as soon as the sound guy plugged in his entire rig, it was really cool. It did include, a couple of great full-range main speakers, and then he even did stereo subs, which pretty much overkill.
Yeah.
For where we were, but cool, that's caring, bringing something to it, which I thought was neat. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, pop, bam, and then during my, boot up and whatever, and so Machine Plus never recovered from that. So nor did I, and yeah, and every day. For the past week, I'd been working on learning these new modules I'd gotten, learning the new case, learning everything about integrating this system, right? And then somewhere in the mix, trying to make some music, So anyway, it was rough, and I get down there, and I'm not having individual outs for the mixer. I'm submixing. Let's see if I think you can see it right back here. There's a little Yamaha 12-channel mixer, right? So I'm using that and just submixing everything to stereo outs, right? And I've spent all this time, making sure things are cool. turning on my subwoofer here in the studio, turning it on and off, making sure like levels are cool. Anyway, that was of no avail because there was just no sound, and it was very frustrating. But here's the thing, like I played like half a song once, and then I played the same half a song again because like the sound engineer said, "Oh, that's your sound check." And I was like, "Yeah, right. Well, I just gave away half my song." So it doesn't, it doesn't have the same impact, right? You're trying to do like a thing and a trajectory, and it's like, well, we've just heard this. And then during that second half song, everything shut down.
Oh,
and,
no.
and that was the end of that. So, lesson learned, I bought a power regulator, more than just a power conditioner and surge protector.
Yeah.
And, which is like incredibly important, and something I should have known. But anyway, it's a Furman. I'll later in while we're talking, I can pull it up. What I got. It's not cheap, but it actually regulates the power. It doesn't just like protect against surges and whatnot. Not a cheap item. I bought two of them, one for home and one for live, because it's like never again. Anyway, that's kind of been my week, man. Like that's like since we were last on the show, that's like everything that's happened to me is like it's getting that all together and have epic fail, and then just kind of going, all right, like you just have to blow through it and just go, well, all right, next one.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that, I mean, you were talking about the crunch of this, like, you got to get together your set, and you had a whole bunch of new gear, and it turns out that none of that was the problem. You had that mastered, all the stuff that you set out to do, you did. And so there's victory in that. That's always a bummer when something at the gig goes wrong.
Yes. Yeah, no, man, thank you for saying that, because that's true. Yeah, that's a detail I was leaving out. I really did like dedicate a lot of time, and it's important to me, especially in Nashville. If I'm out and playing a live gig, which I've done two now, all of two. But the thing is, like, it's a growing and budding community, and so I want it to be like awesome. I want people to understand this can be cool, and it doesn't have to be just or super like ambient, like
Yeah.
And because my music, well, I'm just saying, it's funny, but
that was Shimmer that I just heard.
That was Shimmer.
Yeah.
Right.
But my stuff tends to live a little bit in between. So anyway, it was like really important to me to get out there and do it, and everyone else was fine. Although one of the other artists had the sign blow down by the people that were promoting the event and knock over a bottle of water and maybe someone's beer or something, and it went right on their AC. It was just kind of that part. They survived. I did not.
Yeah. Wow.
I sat and listened and went, yeah, man, that's cool, but like I didn't get to do my thing. But anyway, that's been my week. I tried really hard. Oh, well, failure happens, right? So,
but none of your other gear was damaged, right? Just your machine?
Yeah, none of it was damaged at all. And last night I brought it home after the gig, so about 11:30 or so. I plugged in machine, and hit like load project. Bam, there it is.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you learn from that? So I figured it's voltage. It had to be that. It had to be,
Yeah.
I thought corrupt SD card, maybe, I'm not sure. And so, yeah, I plugged everything in and bam, everything's fine. And I just, it's going to be that way, right? All of us in the chat or here on the show, like, we know, like, as soon as you get it home, everything's fine.
Everything works.
Yep.
So you just try to learn from it, and sometimes there's like, well, what did I learn? Like, how do I learn from that? Like, what is the problem? So anyway, that's kind of the bit. So I did buy some power regulators, which should really help everything.
So
I mean,
those allow you to have like a consistent voltage and allow you to set the voltage range. Is that right?
yes, yeah,
Because I think
absolutely.
like mine, I have a Furman, but it's a conditioner for my
That's
rack, and
yeah, that's
so
why.
it would have like the capacitors to pull out some of the ripple and noise on the line. But yeah, it's I watch the voltage go up and down during the day, depending on how many people are using the AC. But yeah, I mean at a gig, man, power at gigs, they never. It seems like if you play smaller venues anyway, bigger venues it's usually been all right, but smaller venues like that's always like real sketchy, and they don't seem to ever want to do anything about it.
Yeah, super dicey. Marshall, you were going to say something about what you have?
Oh, I've got the same kind of conditioner as Chris does, I think.
Mm.
So I don't have anything where you can dial it in. It just got a little indicator. It'll tell me like that 117
Mm-hmm.
right now on mine, and those will kind of fluctuate through the day. It just tells you. So if you have low voltage or something, that something like that'll tell you. Like right away there's a problem.
Right. Yeah. And does that happen to be the Furman brand, or
Yeah. Yep.
seems to be the ubiquitous thing? That's what
Kind
I've
of
used
what's
before.
available that's not ridiculously expensive. And I
Mm-hmm.
have a couple other ones that don't have the readout on them, but they're just conditioners. Anything that I plug a lot of the equipment into goes into one of those.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, word to the wise and word to whoever's watching. Just remember that, because especially with really sensitive little modules in a Euro rack setting, this could be a real problem. Or any like synthesizer, anything where it's digital in any way, or even analog. It's just, if especially Chris, having lived in Southern California myself, the brownouts and that fluctuating bit that you get, man, you just like that can scramble everything, and it's just not worth it. And that was the last thing on my mind. Like literally, I was so consumed with just going, okay, I'm going to make this happen, and this will be fun. And it's challenging, but it'll be fun. And then I get there, and then it's that. I'm like, that's the thing I missed, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
It's always hard to guess it. I mean, after a while, you start you start your bag with your emergency supplies in it, and we've
right,
at least with acoustic drums, like there's on your end there's nothing really to go wrong with quality hardware, but the sound man deals with everything else. But for the rest for us synthesis or guitar players and bass players and keyboard players and all that, it can be, yeah, you sort of got to have your bag of goodies to go. And so I used to have I mean I play tube amps, but I had a really small solid state head that was, I don't know, some 150 watts or something, and I would have that in a bag, and like extra tubes, extra cables, all the, extra IEC cables, all that kind of stuff. Man, you never know what's going to go on.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's the last thing, it's the least sexy thing you want to buy, of course.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing fun about it, and but at the same time, I was thinking, well, I probably have about like $8,000 worth of gear in that little setup there. I don't want that to go away, just because
Right.
I overlooked that element. So yeah. Anyway, the word to the wise, right? Like, just get it. But here's the thing: I wanted like a floor mount, just a floor version of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I couldn't find that. Just like a strip,
Yeah.
and everything I could find that was truly doing the thing to regulate voltage was all rack mount.
Yeah, because you need a lot more circuitry for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
but put it on the floor, man, right? Like, why not? Because now I have to carry around another rack,
Yeah.
and that's not what I.
Yeah.
I'm trying to condense,
Yeah.
and so yeah, kind of lame in that way, but whatever. I mean, whatever it takes, I guess. I'll be carrying that
Mm-hmm.
around. So, but anyway, that's wow. Went on a long time about that, but yeah, just just to warn everyone, that's a real potential that I personally had not jumped in on. So yeah, be careful of that.
Well, that it's good timing though, because of that experience that you had, as everybody's kind of recovering from things being shut down from COVID. There's a lot of people going back to gigging, and there's been all the stuff that Jim Glue and Jamie and all them have been doing over there with their gigs, and so it is like you can kind of forget about all those things that happened at a gig. So it's a good reminder for anybody that's getting ready to go out.
Yes, most definitely. Yes, get some sort of at least surge protector, But I kind of went all the way to get a voltage regulator because I don't want to lose it, and I don't want that to ever happen again. It's a lame feeling when you're sitting there and you're ready to go and you've been working towards this goal, right?
Yeah.
And then boom, it's your turn, and then
Yeah. Then it's like
nothing.
Yeah, that's like the worst. So Paul's asking, what VR, Tim? Like, which one did you get?
Right. I was just trying to look that up while we were talking.
Okay.
I'd have to go back. I'll get back. Hold on. Yeah, let's keep talking, and I'll go back and look at it.
How you doing, Marshall?
I'm doing good, guys. I've been a little less productive on the music side this week so far. I've been working on server stuff. I just deployed an IRC chat server for my Overclock Music website, so there's going to be some chat functionality on there, which is really cool. And that was an interesting project. I wanted to have something that I could deploy that was completely independent, so not relying on any kind of third-party integration or anything like that. So I'm running my own IRC server, and then I found a web front end that I can embed into the website so that you don't need a chat client, because IRC normally you need to log into a client of some kind to get access. But I've got it integrated now to where it'll actually show up on the website. You can just go in there and start chatting away. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's so out of my wheelhouse. I have nothing but admiration for you. That's very cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I'd like to get some more content on there. Right now, I just do a 24/7 stream. It's just kind of like my music that I released. But eventually, I want to get some other content going on there.
Excellent.
Yeah, man. So to answer, was it Paul's question? It's the MX or M8XAR. So it's it's not cheap, but it's also not like $3,700. Like, you can spend a lot of money if you're like having to do like some sort of data, cloud sort of like protection for people, and that's your biz. Mm-hmm. It's not that level, but it is definitely gigging level, but it's still a little bit of a whap.
Yeah, and Paul's working on a rig that's battery powered, looks like. So that's interesting. I always get scared of battery powered stuff, because what if it forgot to charge it enough, or rather plug it in. Although then you have the potential issues like what Tim had, where nothing turns on and it's time to go.
Yeah, nothing's happening. There's no sound. Oh, and and just before we launch into our actual topic, it was so funny because so I play for sound check. I played for sound check, and now I'm supposed to have already been on with the first bunch, and now I'm in the second bunch, right? And then so for sound check, I hit everything, and and it's like, it's so weird because it's like a dead giveaway. Like, there's no more fun or build up anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So you craft your song, and you want it to be like going from here to there. Well, I've just kind of given all that away to give them sort of the intensity level of where it's going for volume. And then it's like, no, cool, now do the song. And I'm like, but we just did the song. I'm still doing it. And then the second time, that's when things got corrupted again. So it was just kind of nightmarish. I would just like to tell everyone, just keep plowing, because these things happen, and especially in a weird world with modular and you're mixing some things up. Just keep plowing, make your music, because at the end of that, I was just like, I don't know, like I felt devastated, but I also felt like, there'll be another time. So that's my gentle message.
I tell you, like a good sound man is worth their weight in gold. What could have sufficed would have been,
Yes.
And you would just kept going and would have been great.
Yes. And also, it was the classic sound guy thing where opener's level is like here, and then closer's level is like here.
Right. The levels.
You know what I mean? Like,
Nice.
earlier it was like, could you turn the bass down a little bit for like the people that went in front of me? And then by the time the closers came on, it was just like so thumping, and it sounded great. But like, also it's like, come on. By the way, Soundman was also part of that act.
Oh, wow.
Go figure.
Go figure.
Well, Paul has the solution to this all.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Bring your accordion.
Accordion and a harmonica. There you go.
Yes.
Hey, on one of the things like Neil Young and Bob Dylan that you can play it without your hands on the neck brace thing.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
That was very smooth how I just described that. I just want to say that. But you can be honking away on your accordion and playing harmonica.
Right. And again, the funny thing about my world is that, like, I play drums, so acoustic drums. So, like, they sound. Every time I hit them, they make a noise. I don't have to have any electricity, nothing. It's happening,
Exactly.
And so very strange to have the other happen. It's like, oh, geez.
I don't know if I ever told you guys, but oh man, it wasn't terribly long ago. We had probably been married for, I don't know, 13, 14 years at least. And we're over at my in-laws' house and we're hanging out and, like, oh yeah, we've been going through stuff and cleaning up rooms. So they have a baby grand that's kind of in, I don't know, entertainment room or something. I never knew it was there because that room was filled with junk. So I got to see this baby grand that they had, which was cool, and played it a little bit. And then my father-in-law's like, I also found my accordion. Like, can you play accordion? My wife had never heard him play accordion. She'd never seen it. All the years, she'd never seen that. And so he drags it out because he hadn't actually opened it up. He drags it out and, it's dusted off, and he puts it on, and he goes a couple times, like, to hit some notes and things, and it makes some sounds, but it's like a little disjointed. I swear it was like 4 or 5 seconds, and then he kind of paused, and it just like his brain reset, and all of a sudden he's like back at it like it was 40 something years ago. And it was completely shocking because here's a guy that I didn't know. I mean, I knew he had at some point played a little piano, but it was a total surprise. And then not that he just got it out and tried to play something, but that he actually played really well. So that was a fun one.
That's very cool. That's really cool. I not to be cheesy, but I kind of want to like draw this now into our topic, which is like when things don't happen, like what do you do? And so this is one of the ways that I've found some of my heroes in life. It's like when things aren't working, how do they behave, right? And I've learned so much from this. So is it cheesy for me to do this right now?
No, that's a perfect segue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to go. When I lived in Southern California and I was playing with the Desert Rose Band, Chris Hillman was the main songwriter and singer in that band. Chris Hillman is from The Byrds, which is back in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
And so a veteran of many bands, actually. But that particular one was really fun for me to kind of slide into, even though I wasn't really a country musician at that time. we played in Alaska and the power went out. And so those guys, of course, had acoustic guitars. It's part of the sound. So we all went to the front of the stage. It's a smaller audience. We all went to the front of the stage and sat down. And I brought my snare drum up and some brushes, and they brought their acoustic guitars up. And we just sat there and played like that, you know. And we played songs like that because there was no power.
Yeah.
So there you go. Like that was like one of my hero moments for sure, was that understanding that you can overcome these things and still get your music across if you have anything that's acoustic to play. And so number one, like that blew me away. I was like, this is amazing. It was like electrifying. Okay. That's a really bad analogy, right? But it was like, but it literally like kind of made my hair stand up, you know, just to come front. It was so intimate, and we're still playing the same songs, you know, and so that was hero, not number one, but like definitely just mind blowing to me that, okay, we're not going to stop playing. You know what I mean? Like that dedication to, well, we'll just go up front and play the songs, you know. And so Chris Hillman is definitely one of my heroes from all of that, and just from songwriting and from learning how, if you guys know anything about him, what a kind of a trailblazer he was. I mean, essentially kind of creating this sort of a California country genre that didn't exist before. So that's my segue to that, because oh my God, like that was really cool.
I think for anybody that might not know the Byrds so well, like probably what would be some of their most famous songs. I think they did the cover of "Turn, Turn, Turn," which was, if I recall, a Dylan song. But that was late '60s or mid to late '60s, and that was played on the radio. I mean, that's been played so many times. And they had the 12-string Rickenbacker going, and like they just had a sound.
Yes, that is it. And so "Turn, Turn, Turn" and "Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man," which is all that's also a Dylan song, and 8 Miles High. You know, but yeah, definitely the Rickenbacker 360. Is that what it is, right?
I think so.
Yeah, the 12-string. I think so too. Anyway, yeah. So that's my intro into the heroes world. So let's pass it off, man. Who wants next? Like, let's talk about this, because this is kind of everything, isn't it?
But I was just thinking, like, with that experience, it really goes to show like how mindset plays into everything that we do. And if we have a fixed mindset, if we get stuck, this is not what I planned to happen, then it all shuts down, and it just can be a failure. And if we're looking for the opportunities, if we're ready to explore ways around the bad situation that we're in, like a situation at a gig, that, you know, gigs just go sideways so quickly. And so to be able to have that kind of mindset of, I've had similar situations where power went out and we went scrambling for acoustic guitars, and I mean, at least like with drums, you know, they still work. And, you know, find other ways around it. And but that's a really cool story, Tim. I'm trying to think, like, if there were, so or were we talking about terms of like gigs, or just going on to influences?
Oh, influences, right? Really, or anything. I suppose it's wide open, because
it's open.
yeah, it's totally open. Yeah.
I mean, well, let me ask you, Tim. Like, so you're a Nashville drummer. And so I assume that you probably pick up a fair amount of country gigs and recording sessions and stuff. But you said you didn't always operate in that field. Like, what was your early influences? Like, what did you grow up on listening to, who were your early drum influences?
Drum influences and musical influences would be somewhat divergent, but could be a little bit different. Musically, like, I loved classical music. Like, I gravitated towards classical music as a kid, you know. Just, I don't know. I had musical parents. They encouraged that crap. So, you know, sorry for them. And then they allowed me to play drums in their house. You know, I don't know what they were thinking. But yeah, so like, you know, God, like
So,
classic...
like, what composers would you have cited as early influences?
I would say like big influences would be probably Beethoven, Stravinsky. Those are kind of different realms. I love Charles Ives because his whole thing was, he was like an insurance salesman, but he was an American composer who would walk around like a fair and hear two different bands playing. And then he would go back and write music like two different bands playing. Like super like interesting, you know, very 20th century style shit and stuff. So that always captured my imagination. And just anything, you know, I guess I grew up in an era where creativity was most important. I don't think that's the truth anymore. I really think it's better if you can identify with a certain genre because people can digest you better, but I don't know that wasn't my case at all. So yeah, and Debussy, I loved La Mer. Oh my God. I mean, it just goes on and on. Like I would just listen, and I'm a band nerd anyway, so there's all of that. So for classical composers, I mean, in a nutshell, we could just say those. And then, but then it was like listening to jazz and you know, prog rock was big for me. It isn't anymore. I find it boorish, quite frankly. Like, because it's been done, you know, like it's kind of been done. But you know, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Yes, I still love Yes. I think Yes is just Bill Bruford and or Alan White playing drums. I don't care, man. Like that band is just like incredible to me, and it still holds up. It holds up better to me than Emerson, Lake and Palmer. But you know, they both had heavy use of synthesizers, and so I guess that seeped into my thinking. You know, and damn, that stuff it's still cool. So that. And then I got turned on to Herbie Hancock, you know. Wow, the Headhunters record, probably 72 or whatever that is cool because he's like taking synths but putting them in a jazz context, but yet putting them in like a funk context and kind of making them more accessible. Like that's my early stuff. Like it's all that stuff, and it's pretty heady stuff to wrap your brain around, but that was what was so driving me.
Yeah. Well, Marshall, you always surprise me because we'll be talking about something like, and in my head, this is my most electronic friend that I have. Our friend's electric, yes. And you know all the trance that you do and all this kind of stuff, and then you'll just come at me from left field or something that I don't know if it's a real sports analogy, and I wouldn't be the one to be able to say, but you just blindside me like, oh yeah, I used to listen to this band or whatever, and I had a guitar and stuff, and it's what?
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I didn't start getting into the electronic music until around the year 2000. So I got out of high school in '99, and like that summer I started going to clubs. And one of the places, one of my friends that I met this guy at like a Denny's. I was there with some other friends, and then we kind of like coalesced with their group of friends. and I became good friends with this guy, and he was really into the techno stuff, techno trance stuff, and I'd never heard that stuff because it didn't play on the radio.
Yeah.
So I learned all about this whole other genre of music that was all electronic, and I was like amazed. And we went to this club in Denver called Tracks, and they had like multiple floors playing all this different, electronic music. And that's when I was like, that's what I want to make this. Like, I want to figure out how to do this. But yeah, before that, I was way into like rock and ska and pop. Like a big Michael Jackson fan. Like, I love a lot of his music. Janet Jackson. Like, I love like some of that like 90s hip hop as well. So like, there's a lot of stuff I grew up with that I liked. That's nothing like what I make or what I listen to these days. You know what I mean? But still, some of those influences, like song structures and things like that, like listening to those songs back in the day, like you get used to like listening to how songs should be structured. And one of the things I tried to do when I started doing like trance and techno and stuff was kind of a similar format and song structure, but using these other electronic elements.
Yeah, I hear, and I've commented this about this before about your music, in that I find it much more interesting than a lot of electronic music that's out there. My background is a little more like that, rock songwriting kind of thing. And I always felt like there was something in your music that I could really connect to in how you structure songs.
Yeah.
But we can all, there's a whole nother side topic. I don't, well, at least out here on the West Coast, like, what do you do after a gig? You go to Denny's.
Right.
Or a Fat Burger.
Yeah.
So,
if that's still around, I don't know.
Like, we were too young to get into anything really cool. So the Denny's was open 24/7, and we would go there, and they had a smoking area, so we were cool, sitting there and smoking our cigarettes, thinking we were cool and stuff. And that's what we did. So we would just hang out at that Denny's, and I met a lot of really cool people that way, actually, back in those days.
It's amazing. Like, so talk about influences, and like you have the top tier ones, but you have your peers and your friends and how they influence you, right? Like, and encourage you or challenge you, like, in different ways, man. So, the culture of music is part of that conversation, right, Marshall? Because like, you really, hanging out with your friends inspired you and propelled
literally
you.
Changed my life in terms of all this. This wouldn't happen, wouldn't be here. Who knows what I'd be into, But this is really cool stuff. And I remember thinking, like, I thought it was all computers. I didn't even know what a synthesizer was. I knew what keyboards were, right? Like, but I didn't understand that there was this whole, like, just massive amount of instruments that were out there that can make these sounds. I thought it was all done in the computer back then, And, yeah, obviously you find out. And now it's so easy to get information on how things are done. Back then, there wasn't YouTube. There was the internet, but it wasn't something that was easy to find information. And back then, nobody wanted to help you. So it was a lot of trial and error, and then getting on like forums, like the Propellerhead forum when I was into Reason, sharing songs and stuff and getting feedback. Like all those, I was on a lot of those sites, like those feedback sites. I'd make something, I'd submit it, and try and get people to give me feedback on it. And that all helped a lot. So that again kind of plays into the whole peers thing. But I mean, the weird thing is like with me and the techno and trance stuff is it wasn't really a main influence at the beginning because I didn't know anything about it. It was just like I really like these sounds. And one of the things I did is the first album I picked up was this one here. I can't believe you can still get it. It's
Yeah.
Let me pull it up here. Oops, sorry.
Ooh, I'm fighting you there, Chris. Yeah, it's called Trance Unlimited, and this is a really nice mix CD filled with various artists. And this was one of the coolest things I thought about, this trance stuff is that you listen to the album from start to finish, it's almost like one really long song because the tracks are mixed together and they seamlessly transition into the other. And this is still one of my favorite albums, believe it or not. It's not even like by a single artist, it's several.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my foray into the genre there. So
back before you initially found your music, the rock and the ska and that kind of stuff, growing up, was there music that you kind of naturally gravitated when it wasn't your music, when you were just hearing your parents' music and things around you?
Yeah, so my parents listened, like my old man was a big Eagles fan, so there was a lot of Eagles in the house. Fleetwood Mac, like those kind of things. And my mom was really into country music, so there was a lot of country.
Wow.
Garth Brooks and Dunn, like all these bands like from back in the 90s, like that was kind of what I grew up with in the house. And I wasn't so much into that stuff. I was more into, the hip hop and stuff back then. I'm trying to think now. Like Criss Cross,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like Aaliyah. There was some really nice, like really cool, like hip hop music in the 90s. I the stuff that's out now, like I don't really like the pop music or anything these days. I guess that's how you know you're getting old, right?
Yeah.
But man, some of those 90s tracks are still awesome, and I'll go back and listen to those every now and then because you can get them on YouTube now,
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, so like part of like talking about influences is like what like just built a fire underneath you, right? And you just like out of the blue, you're just like, I have to do that. And Marshall, it's kind of part of what you're saying, right? Is like,
yeah,
it's like trance. I'm like, I have to do. That's it. And,
well, I thought like being in a rock band would have been cool, right? And so I did try playing guitar. I asked for a guitar for Christmas one year. I got this really crappy Washburn thing, and I learned how to play some power chords and learned how to play Enter Sandman and stuff like that. But the problem was like nobody I went to school with was really into that stuff. Like nobody, like I couldn't find anybody to be in a band really. So the cool thing about the electronic stuff is I could just sit in my apartment with my little laptop and use my little crappy tracker program and write music, and it was all mine, you know what I mean? So I didn't have to rely on bandmates or anything like that.
I think am I wrong in saying that Deadmau5 would be an influence on your style?
Yeah, definitely Deadmau5. And one of the cool things about him is he, like his story, like how he got into music. Like he started work, if I remember right, he was working as like an intern or something at a recording studio, and he was there all the time and like trying to learn as much as he could. And one of his mantras is like he wanted to do everything himself. And that's kind of how I feel like I'm very similar in that way. So I kind of relate to him on that level. And he just makes some really cool stuff. Like his tracks, especially back in the day, like really good stuff. So I use his production as a template to kind of match my stuff to, because that's how good I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So he's one of the reference artists that I use to reference tracks with when I'm doing my mastering and mixing stuff.
That's fantastic. And I would have to say I am of the same opinion. I think what he does is super legit, like, and just really inspiring. Like when I listen to it, it takes me somewhere, and that's ultimately what you want music to do. And why a person would become your hero is because they're just like, what? Like what a great idea. And they do it with such like conviction,
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, the guy literally does everything, down to the artwork and his whole stage presence. Like he designed that giant cube that I mean,
yeah.
The guy is like pretty cool. Like he's got my respect 100%. And I know there's people don't like him because he can be abrasive, but dude's got the receipts to back it up. Like he knows what he's doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And who cares if they're abrasive or not? You know, you're not really being inspired by them because their personality. You know, you're being inspired by them because of their music. And so there are a lot of a-holes out there in the world, and but you can still like their music. You know.
Right.
So yeah, and I'm definitely in the same boat, man. I just think what he does, I think what Dead Mouse does is incredible. So anyway, yeah, I thought that was an influence for you. I wanted to
definitely him.
Hit on that.
BT, BT back in the day, Tiesto. I'm trying to think of some of the other. Some of the other acts and artists and stuff that I would listen to a lot. The problem is like with this type of music, it's usually compilations and it's somebody mixing a bunch of different artists necessarily. And I know there's a skill in that whole DJ part of it, but to me it was always about the music itself. Like this track sounds like this and it's epic. You know what I mean? So that was a cool thing, and there was a lot of different variety. And some people like would think that music sounds all the same, but it's because they're not really listening. Like there's a huge variety in the trance and techno space. The problem is that, and this happens in pretty much any genre, I think, is eventually somebody gets famous doing a certain style and everyone copies it, and that's kind of what takes over. You know what I mean? Like dubstep is a great example of that, like with Skrillex and that whole bro step style, like got really popular.
Yep.
But dubstep is like completely different. You know what I mean? It's very similar to that. That happened to trance, and like trance is, especially if you go back and listen to some like older stuff from the late '90s, early 2000s, like that. I think is like the best era.
Yeah, that's when it was like seminal and like hitting and just like it's super inspirational, right? Like that is
people still trying new things.
Yeah, right. They're not just like emulating the thing that already exists. You know, they're creating something like a new thing. And
it's totally a new thing. And there's this. I remember this documentary called Berliner Trance, I think it's what it was called. And it was this like little promotional video that this record label did. They were located in Germany, I think, and they. They had interviews with like Paul Van Dyke and all these guys like before they were like mega famous. You know what I mean? And to see that and to hear these guys talking about what they were doing, like, they all had this huge passion for what they were doing. And growing up with the Wall, you know what I mean? And they were like talking about how they would try and get tapes back and forth because they couldn't listen to the stuff on the radio there. Like it was like not allowed kind of thing. And they'd throw these underground parties and stuff. So, like, it's just kind of a neat dynamic with how the style kind of came to be as well. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's a great conversation. By the way, just to file away for one of our future episodes, is just like how we think styles came to be and what that means to us. I think that might be like a cool topic. I don't know. Call me crazy.
All right, I'm writing it down.
Okay. But that does seem like a really, like, because that's super interesting, I would think, to everyone. I mean, it certainly is to me, like how did we get here, from here, kind of thing. And anyway, there's so many different paths through how music has evolved and then also has gone sideways. I guess we'll save that for another week. But that is an thanks,
interesting
Marshall.
thing.
That was a rock and roll idea right there, man.
There you go.
That's the truth. That's the truth. And it's just really cool. Like, I love what you do, man. Like, what I came to learn about is that I love trance, and I didn't know that. I didn't even know it was called that.
Yeah.
But I would find that on like digital star streams or something, like back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
On like NPR or whatever, like, public radio, and I would hear that on a Sunday night and go, damn, that is cool. Like it had everything to me that was exciting. And so in some ways that was like an inspiration to me. And then here you are, like, in that, like, that's your thing, like totally really is your thing. And it's just, I don't know, it's very inspirational to me. So I think it's really cool. And I like hearing what your influence is and how you arrived at that. That's really, really insightful to me. And again, inspiring to me. I love hearing, other people's stories,
Yeah, for sure. It's a cool thing. It was something I didn't expect myself, and again, it kind of came through friends, and it's interesting how you can get plugged into stuff and then just take to it like a flame. You know what I mean? So, and that was kind of my deal with the whole trance thing. I always thought like I would try and do rock music. Really, like I was really into like Smashing Pumpkins and Nirvana, like those '90s grunge bands. I was a big fan of a lot of those, and even still. Like, say again.
Sorry, it's great music. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, and the '80s. But the thing is, like, I always listened to the electronic sounds and stuff too. So like, I liked a lot of '80s stuff because they used a lot of synths. I didn't know they were synths, but I knew they were like electronic sounds, and I always was like, those are cool sounds. Like, I want to know how they make those. So I think it would be cool to do some rock, techno, trance thing like Infusion. I think that would be fun to try.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to kind of mix acid and rock.
Yeah. I don't know that anybody's really done that with acid.
Yeah, I mean, when I got the little TDO3, I need to go back and finish that track because I started one that was, I thought I was going really well and sounding fun, but I guess I got busy doing other stuff and never finished it. But I might have to go back and do that because I always liked that. I mean, back in the day, just hearing those, rolling TB303s, like really resonant, squelchy sounds, and I was like, that's a cool sound, but I wasn't in that world to really know what was going on.
Yeah, and that was like super underground, right? The acid house stuff, like Josh Wink. Like I remember seeing an interview with him in the early 2000s, and I didn't know what acid was either. But seeing that and like hearing Higher State of Consciousness is like, it was really cool. I obviously didn't have the money to afford those types of instruments back then, but yeah, it was cool. Like, and that 303, some people hate it, but like it is a cool instrument, and I'm glad that we have an affordable clone that is pretty damn close to the original and the Behringer. It's one of the clones that Behringer's done that I'm like, yes, good job on that one.
So, Marshall, like, pardon my ignorance, but like, so trance came from Detroit?
Trance started, I think it started in Europe.
Or more of a European thing.
And it actually even has ties into like Buddhism, like Indian culture in a way also, I think.
Wow.
Which makes sense because like when you listen to like Psytrance, which is something that I've tried to kind of step into. I've done a few Psytrance style tunes, but I'm not super experienced with that yet. But the imagery in a lot of videos and stuff that you see in that style of music is very psychedelic, Buddhist type stuff.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There's some great playlists on YouTube that I've stumbled across before I even knew you, Marshall, or even like, I guess, like consciously processed what trance was. That was like, that music inspired me, and I thought, wow, what is that? And then finding some playlists on YouTube, and exactly, the visuals are very psychedelic and kind of fractal, and
yes, exactly,
and just
I've always been a fan of that stuff.
Very intrigued. Yeah, exactly. Like it really suits the music.
And we got imperfect. Did someone say psychedelic? Yes, sir, we did.
No, we never said that.
And real quick, and we can move on to you, Cryss. But I did just want to also comment that in modern times, like one of the people that I've been like really impressed with and kind of influenced by, not necessarily on a musical standpoint, but performance wise, is Kebu. You guys know who he is?
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar
Yeah.
with who he is. I haven't heard a lot of his stuff though.
Yeah, so let me pull him up here real quick. Just his website. This guy rolls around Europe with a bunch of vintage synthesizers and performs with that rig.
Yeah, Kibu or whatever. Yeah.
Kebu. I'm not sure exactly.
Kibu. Yeah, me either. No. Yeah, man. Like.
There's the hero for me right there, because that guy rolls around and does this live stuff like a boss. Like he does. Like you look him up on YouTube. That guy does really cool performances.
Yeah. Yes, I agree, and I wasn't familiar with him either. It's actually Jamie Morton of Geosense that I think showed something of him on one of his shows, the Sense Show or whatever, and it was like, oh man, that's like he's he's in it, right? Like
I was really bummed because we were on that show and I wanted to ask him some stuff about his setup and everything, but we couldn't get the audio to work two-way or something weird happened. That was one of those streams that Jamie did that was like 20 hours or 12 hours or something.
Right, it was. Yeah.
One of the special streams. Yeah,
yeah.
So I got to be on a stream with him, but I didn't get to talk to him. I mean, he's one of my heroes. You know what I mean? So that was still cool.
Yeah, that's the point here, heroes. Yeah, man, and like, dude, that guy, like, I don't know how he's putting it together. It'd be really, fascinating to say, how are you building it?
Yeah, and I just want to be like, how long do you practice? Because that guy nails it.
Oh shit.
You know what I mean? So he's got a sequencer that I think, and then he programs everything to where certain stuff he knows he's going to play on certain synths live, and then he's got the other stuff kind of going through the sequencer, and then it'll transition, and he does it so well. And he's surrounded by all these synths. Like it's impressive. Like it's super impressive.
He's rehearsing it like a band, like, he's probably rehearsing, hours every day, I mean, I would venture to guess. And that's like, that gets my respect and admiration for sure, because it's not always just like, I'm goofing around and bleep bloop and blah, blah, blah. Like some people really have structures they're trying to follow. And that, even though like some people might not find that as interesting and like, oh, you're just like pressing a button sort of opinion. There's also a lot behind that that's not just pressing a button, So I see what you're saying about him, and because I got turned on to him, through Jamie, and it was like, man, like that's the real deal,
It would be super cool to get to a point where I'm able to take. I don't know that I'd go with a rig that big, but take a few synths out and do some really cool stuff like that,
Yeah. Well, good luck. Just don't take certain things out. Don't get into modular. Don't do modular.
Make sure you get a power strip.
Make sure you get a power regulator, and don't take out modulator, and don't do a show with anyone else. Make sure it's just you. Because then it's like a whole different ballgame. It's like sound check, before everyone comes in. That's how you do it. Wait, and they go, it's like, yeah, cool. You want to do your song now? Yeah, that's what I just played.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? Let's hear about some of your influences.
Yeah, I'm thinking like growing up. So with this beard, I look like 100 years old, but born in the 70s, childhood growing up in the 80s, adulthood began in the 90s. I remember my grandpa listening to a lot of classical music, and to me at the time, it just didn't have any pattern to it, and I was like, man, this just doesn't really go anywhere. Later I heard stuff that I liked and I would listen to, but my dad, gosh, I can't stand any of his music. It was like, he did like some Elvis, and that was good, but he would tend to listen to a lot of stuff like Patsy Cline and Boots Randolph, and I'm trying to think of some of the other ones he listened to, like old music that was from his parents' generation, probably not his, you know. And so the music that I heard when I was little would have been oldies, riding around in the car with mom, and she didn't really like. It was weird. She always had music on in the car, but she wasn't like a really avid music person. So there was no like records or tapes or anything at home. And so it was hearing oldies, and there was a lot of it that when I was young, I really couldn't stand. I really, at the time, and I realized like aesthetics really play into music a lot for me. So hearing it, in the early 80s over a really crappy mono, AM radio station, or, my grandpa's like ancient little old radio thing, like it's missing some of the appeal, and you're missing part of the music. And so like some of the R&B stuff that was in oldies music, I could never get into. It was annoying to me. But then later when I could hear the bass and hear guys like James Jamerson play, I was like, oh wow, this actually is really cool. But the stuff that I probably gravitated to as a kid was as much like and as heavy of rock as I could hear from that stuff, which was not very heavy. I mean, the Stones and the Beatles and the Kinks, things like that, where if there was a song that was a little more rock, then I was really drawn to it. And in junior high, friend that I'd hang out with a bunch, lived a few doors down. He had an older brother that would have been maybe 5 or 7 years older than us. And so he was cool and older. And my friend just like he thought his brother was the end all. And so his brother listened to all the 80s stuff that a lot of our friends listened to, like Depeche Mode and, trying to think, like Duran Duran and NXS and all those kind of bands. And, man, he'd always have that on the radio, and it drove me nuts. I can't stand this. I really couldn't stand it. And so, by, junior high or something, it was like, we're listening to the things that other kids listen to. And I was like trying to, find out what's interesting. And there was some of that, earlier rap and hip hop stuff that was very popular in the late 80s and early 90s that appealed to me. And again, it was some of the heavier stuff, and there was stuff that I was listening to. I had this Digital Underground album, and so years after I had listened to it, I was into guitar stuff. I was into Jimi Hendrix, and I had found that CD and I put it back on. I was like, I discovered that they had sampled Jimi Hendrix off of I think it was Band of Gypsies or something. And there was songs that were sampled that I would end up later hearing from the original artist and kind of really getting into. And so when I did get a guitar the summer before high school, that's when I kind of decided, it's like, well, there's all that early 90s hip hop and rap. I think I was probably a little more into the rap type stuff at that time, but I didn't really feel like I didn't really feel like I had a. What's that?
Dre? Like, or what?
Oh, before that, like LL Cool
Easy.
J, and I mean, at the time, like I'm trying to think who was out at the time, like LL Cool J, Digital Underground. There's like a lot of the early gangster rap stuff, like Eazy-E, Beastie Boys,
yeah,
NWA. Run DMC. It was quite a varied lot of music some of that music was very creative and very interesting. And then when I got the guitar, I said to myself, like, all right, you got a guitar, you need to listen to some rock music. And so I had nowhere to go because my friends didn't listen to rock music. Within a couple of years, they were pretty much all listening to rock music, but at that point, nobody did. And so I had to try to find stuff. And so it started with me with the Beatles, because some of the Beatles stuff was really great, and it was more rock, and even on an oldie station, which is the Beatles I don't really listen to a whole lot. I like the psychedelic and later stuff, and so I started learning Beatles songs, and one of the first rock albums that I bought. So I think I had bought Beatles stuff, and I went to Christmas up in Idaho with some cousins and riding around with my older cousins, and they were listening to Metallica Black Album, and I was a little just before I started playing guitar, and I was like, this stuff is scary. Like whatever, junior high or something, late junior high, I think I was in, I was like, man, this is like scary stuff. I don't know, but I really liked it. It both scared me and thrilled me at the same time. And so I had got the album, and I still remember being, and from my background and parents and stuff, like they didn't like any of that stuff. They thought it was all scary. So, that's what I kind of understood, but there was this like kind of hunger. I was like, well, this is interesting. Let me listen to this. And when I got the guitar, then it kind of filled in. I've told the story many times before. Like I started borrowing records from my girlfriend's dad, and it was like a lot of classic rock stuff. And out of those, stuff like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin really became big bands. And I sought out Jimi Hendrix because of Wayne's World. If you remember, Foxy Lady was playing. I was like, yes. What the heck is this? This is kind of cool. And that kind of psychedelic sound really gotten into my head. And so the, kind of like 1967, 68, 69, that was like a really big era for me when I became a musician, because of those kind of bands and the kind of area they went into. And you're talking, Marshall, before about psychedelic stuff, and those kind of sounds really appealed to me. Like I had started with the early Beatles, it's like, I Want to Hold Your Hand or stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is good. I'm going to try to learn some of this. And then, like, oh, Day Tripper, that's a lot more interesting to me now. And then you start getting on, and, then it's like, I Am the Walrus. And I'm like, I am all in on I Am the Walrus. This is fantastic. And so stuff like that really appealed to me. And of course, once I hit Pink Floyd, I was just in heaven. I was like, love this stuff. And, but those were the times also where grunge was hitting. And so, people in school started getting, started listening to that stuff, and I started hearing it. And, probably like the earlier Stone Temple Pilots stuff and Soundgarden and bands like that. But one of the big albums for me was Siamese Dream by Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah. And again, like, one of the threads that we've been talking about is like bands that changed things, the way I thought about things. And so I'm listening to like a lot of Led Zeppelin at the time. And, Jimmy has a lot of different sounding guitars on the recordings. Live, he's just playing basically one sound, and he'll kick a phase shifter on or something. But it's basically like you're playing distorted guitar through the entire song. And then Smashing Pumpkins, when they got a little bit bigger, like with Siamese Dream, songs like Today, where it's like totally just, we're not talking like, Jimmy Page rolling back his pickup a little bit to clean up the sound from his Marshall. Like, no, like totally clean, verse parts. And all of a sudden the chorus hits, and it's just like a wall of distortion and fuzz, and that really intrigued me. And then, of course, like with some of those early Pumpkins albums, they were kind of psychedelic in their own way too. And so it really hit home with me, like the aesthetic of it and all of that. And there's always been like kind of side ventures into other types of music. I love blues, like older blues. Like I would say my favorite blues is like, if you go all the way back, you got the original guys like Robert Johnson, and then you have another generation, people that would be like his kids' age if he had lived, but like Muddy Waters and B.B. King, Buddy Guy, those kind of guys, and then you had the British blues musicians that were enamored with those guys and the original guys. So like the very early Clapton stuff, Cream, and a lot of the Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck and those kind of Eric Clapton, those guys, and then later discovering Stevie Ray Vaughan. Unfortunately, after he had passed, and that was a bummer, but just very influential on style. And I always try to be curious about other styles, so I've like gotten into like kind of subgenres of things, shred guitar, neoclassical stuff, and or surf or something like that. But yeah, kind of always centered around rock, but it was always kind of the bands that moved it into new areas, I guess. And then I guess, for me, like not being exposed to, I mean, I was exposed to a lot of synthesizers with some of the 80s music, but when I got into rock, it's kind of funny because, thinking about the late 80s and early 90s, to me, synthesizers were the things that ruined it.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I mean, when I heard synthesizer, I'm like
excited when I heard synths and rock.
Oh no! Well, so like with stuff that was contemporary or like the 80s, like if you heard a hard rock song or something, they got synthesizer in the background. I was like, "What the hell is this crap?" I'm like, "This is ruining it." And I it's all the early digital stuff. So I was really turned off by those sounds. And then
it's all DX7, right?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I remember like just having these just shuddering at Whitney Houston songs and stuff like that would have that kind of chorusy, DX7 piano. I mean, I've come to appreciate it afterwards, but that stuff used to make me cringe. And like, if you had like a hard rock or a metal song that had a synth pad in the background, I'm like, what the hell?
That's kind of how I was like with like vocals in trance. Like I'm like, there should be no singing. This isn't a ballad. Like, what is this love song? I don't care about that.
Yeah.
So I think like the synthesizer stuff that appealed to me, I've said many times, was actually the much older stuff. It was the 70s stuff, and it was hearing, stuff like "Welcome to the Machine" by Pink Floyd or "Lucky Man" by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, where it was kind of the classic analog, a lot of Moog stuff that was just that to me. Like it was literally like two instruments in my head, because if I heard some like late 80s, FM or Rompler pads, I would like, whoa. And then if I heard like a mini Moog, I was like, man, that is a sound. That is crazy, man. I'm a guitar player, but I really like that sound. And things changed. I've become more open in my older age, but I just kind of funny to think back, like
that's
your
not
opinions
normal
on things.
You're not supposed to become more open in your older age.
Yeah, you're supposed to hate everything and tell everyone to get off your grass.
Yeah. Everything's supposed to. Yeah, exactly. Dude, I think I saw where you were talking about King Crimson was like a big influence for you, and so the 80s version of that, essentially, of King Crimson was a big influence on me. Speak about that.
Well, I would say like for more prog type stuff, I didn't discover King Crimson until much later. And a friend of mine, turned me on to, I can't remember what the album's called, but The Face, Court of the Crimson King.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard that, I was already in love with Mellotron. So, like, once I heard that, I was like, yes, I like this. Okay, I'm going to listen to their albums and stuff. But the prog bands that I was really into would have been Rush. Man, like Tom Sawyer, that kind of stuff really did it for me. And then Dream Theater from the 90s. Listening to some of their albums, like I can't remember what anyway, there's one album that I was listening to, and another album came out which was called Awake, and it was featuring 7-string guitar on it. It had a couple tracks with 7-string, and it was heavy, and they were just intensely good musicians. And at that point, like Images and Words, and especially Awake. But kind of what you were speaking to, Tim, like with prog, it's like man, you got to keep prog in balance, because it's very interesting music. It's very technically proficient, but you have to write songs still. And so the prog bands that like are all about showing off, I don't really care about, but the ones that could write good songs, like, Rush and King Crimson and Dream Theater, those are the guys that really kept it interesting for me. And I like, oh yeah.
I just think that's really interesting because, the three of us, we overlap in so many ways. And that's why I think it's, our discussions are actually quite interesting. And with King Crimson, like when the 80s version of that to me is just like the best thing ever. It's just the coolest ever. And in the 70s thing's a little bit like, yeah. But when Adrian Belew joined that band and started writing songs, like more songs, but still let them, do their crazy thing, and Frippertronics and all of that is happening. This is like, during that time, I would have told you, without a doubt, this is the best rock and roll band in the world. Because it was like, they were the best. They inspired me so much with, like, everything they did. It just kind of blew my mind. Like they were going in so much uncharted territory, but with Belew at the helm, so to speak, and singing, like it always felt like there was a home too, right? So it's not just like, I'm among the clouds, and the clouds are moving. It never felt like that to me, And I was just like, oh my God, like this is like gritty and yet prog, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever heard, and just their imaginations recorded to me was just like, all right, that's like, I aspire to be that. So that was, definitely one of my inspirations, but I know one of yours, right, Cryss?
Yeah, I mean, Crimson is great. I still need to dig deeper into their catalog. Like when I was discovering them, it was kind of at the point where I don't know, because music has changed. How we digest music has changed, and I find actually myself a lot during the day, like listening to stuff from YouTube and trying to check out new stuff. And it doesn't help that, like, I listened to a lot of years of classic rock radio, and some of my old cars, all I had was a radio, no tape player or CD player or anything. So it unfortunately, one of the side effects of radio and airplay is that, man, songs that are so amazing that you love so much, you hear them so many times that the magic kind of disappears from them, and you have to take a break for a long time before you can hear it again. King Crimson's kind of nice because not a lot of their stuff got onto the radio, and so when I go and listen to King Crimson, it's always feels like it's a little more fresh. I mean, Court of the Crimson King I've heard a billion times already, but outside of that, like it still feels like there's things to be discovered in it, and there is. I mean, they're a brilliant band.
Absolutely. And Marshall, like, so that's back to your point too. I want to like re-engage you about that, like how trance was it's still not mainstream to some extent, right? But like, talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few tracks that kind of crossed over a little bit. Like I remember that DJ Sammy track. I can't remember the name of it, but that was kind of a big tune. Overall, you're right. Like it doesn't get the commercial success and I think that it's designed for clubs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and club music isn't always radio friendly in terms of format, and the tracks can be long. yeah, the radio edit is like 3.5 minutes of a regular song, but it's hard to cut down a trance tune to that length and get anywhere really. So
Yeah.
and that's one of the things about that style of music is you start at one place and you end somewhere else, and there's this whole journey through it, and it isn't always it, it it isn't always like a regular song. So radio play, unless it's late night, like I remember in Colorado, there's a radio station that would do 11 at 11, and it was an hour long of like trance. So that was about the extent of the radio play that you used to get with that kind of stuff. And then maybe it was different in Europe because I know, especially with like the Eurodance stuff, like that got really popular. And you can even like the more housey stuff with vocals tend to do better, like in terms of pop culture, right? Like crossing over into mainstream. So, and I always like thought that the vocals ruined that type of music though. So
they kind of to your point, I would say they sort of cheapen it.
yeah.
Does that make sense? Like,
I kind of feel the same way because it's like if I wanted to listen, like the exciting part of it's like classical music, and like Tim, like you, like I like classical stuff too, and I also like a lot of film score and game soundtrack stuff. So one of the people I forgot to mention was like Marty O'Donnell, who did the Halo Combat Evolved soundtrack. That's like one of my favorite like game soundtracks of all time.
oh, that's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the whole thing about it is it's about the music and the melodies. It's not about the words and the lyrics. That's what makes it different. And if you have like a little bit of vocals here and there, like you know how the mantra, like you got a techno beat and then it's like a little voice says like, "Oh, party" or something,
Pure energy.
Right.
Yeah, pure energy. Yeah, something like that. Like that's cool, But like belting out like a whole like chorus and verse and stuff, like I'm like, what? I don't like that.
Yeah, that does take it to a different level. That's not necessarily, well, it's not what you like, right? And I'm with you. Like, I think instrumental music is highly underrated.
Yeah, and I think that
I mean, it is, like
it's a crossover though, and I think that's why they do it, right? Because most people don't listen to music for the music necessarily. Some people do, right? But most of them listen to it because the music, the words, and the lyrics mean something to them, and that's a whole different way of listening to stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not how I tend to listen to music. I'm more like analytical. I'm like breaking it down. Like, how is it? Like, oh, that transition there was sick. Like that synth sound that came in here. Whoa, that kind of stuff. That's what I'm listening to.
Yeah, and if you get the vocal out of the way, right,
Exactly.
then you can actually like listen to what's happening. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Like you can actually listen to what's happening, and you can do more interesting things with the bed. I think in general, like the music bed, right? So, man, I get it. Sometimes you want to. Most people. The thing is, we're speaking right now with a human voice, and the human voice people like to hear. And that's sort of the bottom line with why that's such a mass appeal. I mean, it's almost tribal, right? Like, yeah, I want to hear the voice. I want to hear lyrics. I want something I can relate to,
Yeah.
With trance or with any kind of super highly creative instrumental music, you can do other things, right? And then you're actually inspired to and almost like pushed to do it differently. Whereas otherwise, you can like do kind of a progression that's 1-4-5 or something, and it's not about that progression anymore. It's about the story and whatever is being sung and what the lyric is, and so those are definitely two different things. I do love them both. They both have a place, but like for me, timbre and music and music. That was kind of stupid.
Yeah, listen to
And music, timbre and music and music and music. But like
pitch and
yeah,
harmony.
I'm just trying to surround it, but literally like timbre and like arrangement and like feel and like implication and like, what's like what really hits you, and innovation when something is just like really just like, okay, case in point. The first time with my old friend, I bought Yes, Close to the Edge. Okay, I don't know when that was. Whenever it was, I brought it home. We put it on, and we're sitting there drinking coffee, and it's like 7 in the evening, and we're probably like, I don't know, 12, And I put this on, and at the very, it's one of the best records ever. Like they really, I don't even know how they came up with it. I still hold to this day, it's one of the most creative records I've ever heard. But into it, there's like this bass thing. It's just all like floaty, and there's doo-doo, doo-doo, bop, bop. And I literally like spewed my coffee. It was so impactful. Like it was so impactful. And so that's what, I always want to feel in terms of influences. I always want to feel that kind of like, wow, And you can't always feel that, right? But like, I guess that's what I'm saying in terms of like music that connects.
Yeah, it depends on what part of the aesthetic or the meaning that you're looking for. So I mean, I like both, but I would say like music with really with lyrics that make you think, that are not super surfacey. Like to me, the worst would be, the kind of pop country. We're in the pickup and we're going down to the lake and we got beer, and like I could care less. I don't really care for that. I'm not saying all country music is like that. I'm just saying there is some very popular stuff that has that kind of feel and cadence to it. But to me the stuff that always really hit home is if I could listen to something that had the atmosphere of the music, that was really well done and really well written and performed, but then the lyric, it gave it that bed for that lyric to kind of take your mind into a whole nother place, and to have an experience without, psychedelics or drugs or something, but to have that kind of thing where it shifts your perception of reality and makes you think about your life differently. And that's one of the areas where I think the lyric, even though it's not necessarily like the vocals is a part of the music, but the lyric is this other thing. But it's always been something that's been really important with music, and I listen to both. But the songs that have been really most impactful on me, like where I've had those moments where, you're talking about the hit of a bass or a drum or something, and to me it's always been like the way that a lyricist can turn an idea and make you think differently about something by seeing the world in a different way. Paul's bringing up poetry. I'm not too much into poetry. There's some poets that I like. Robert Frost is one of them. But I can't really get into just the bare poetry myself. To me, the music with the kind of poetic and the philosophical thought in it is what really, really, that's what changes my headspace.
I'd love to just interject right now. I'm just dying to, and yes, Cryss, yes. And here's the thing, like, can you get to music without lyrics, without a vocal and without lyrics, sooner than you could get with just someone like speaking poetry? Like there's no music involved, it's just the lyrics, like
a slam poem.
It's sort of a well, it's sort of a redundant question, right? Like, but without the context of music, right? Then you're just like, and that's nice, and it's great, and it could be incredibly life changing. It can be incredible, right? But like, as soon as you match those two up, it's great. But the thing is, you can take the lyric away and the music can still stand, right, on its own. And I don't think that's true of if you just have the poetry hanging out there in the air. I don't think it's nearly as impactful to as many people. If you're just like reading poetry and then you take that away and then you just go, but here's some music, and people go, yeah, that makes me kind of do this. And then you marry the two things, right? And then now you have like, oh, okay, that's totally different. But it's just funny, like how much we're dependent on the human voice. We're just so like keyed into it. As soon as that gets added, right?
Well, I mean, it's very, in our DNA, in our evolution, that's how we are. And I think it is that marriage of the two that really makes it accessible for a lot more people. Now, unfortunately, like when you see with pop music, not all pop music again, but a lot of the popular stuff, like when you read lyrics from some of these songs that teenage girls are listening to, or teenage boys are listening to these days, are like extremely repetitive. They're very dumbed down, and it hooks them. It hooks them though, but it's not a very sophisticated form of thought. They're not changing. They're not growing. They're not thinking about the world differently.
Well, that always surprised me, that the style of music that's popular amongst the younger kids today, if you would have made anything anywhere near that back in the day, you'd get laughed at. Like, what is this? This isn't even no melody. It's just one tone, the whole thing, and you got your vocal doing a monotone rhythmic thing. Like it's I don't know. I guess I'm sounding a little old man here, but I don't get it.
Well,
all right. I mean, we have to give it that to consider aesthetic, and with aesthetic there comes a very personal, subjective way of interacting with it, and so I think that's the thing. So, like for instance, two forms of music that are not. I mean, I feel like they're wildly different, but in the grand scheme of things of all the world music, they're next door neighbors, and punk and metal. And again, if you're really into the punk world, metal does not appeal to you usually, and vice versa. And I had friends that were super into punk rock, and I was much more into metal, and my best friend was into metal, and from the outside, it's like very aggressive forms of music, very intense vocals or screaming or whatever it is, loud. To my mom, she'd probably think they'd sound the same, and I'm like, well, no, they're totally different styles. Like punk is raw and emotional and poorly played usually, but that's part of the aesthetic of it, is that it's so aggressive and unskilled, and it's just brash. And metal is the like refined and like intensely technical, but it's also very aggressive, and so in a lot of ways they're very, very different. But again, like it can really be interesting to see how musical forms that are both very similar and very different appeal so much one way or the other to people, and we could compare other blues or jazz, would be a similar comparison. And it's funny because, it's like, well, I come down on the metal side versus punk. And I like the certain type of metal intensity and the technique and all that kind of stuff. But with blues and jazz, like I would say that jazz is more like metal in that, and blues is more like punk. And on that one, I come down on blues and the very, emotional and raw and that kind of stuff. And so it doesn't make sense that even
it's so interesting, yeah.
Within one person, there's this discrepancy. And so I mean, I get it. Like there's these songs that everybody comes from a different place and different mindset about that. And a lot of people have a different purpose for listening to music. Those of us that are here tonight in the chat, and the three of us, like we're much more analytical about things, and we're much more studied than just an average person about music. But I mean, I can see why people get caught into some of the maybe what I would call more dumbed down forms of pop music, and there's some really brilliant pop out there. But I'm like, if there's some really well written pop, like, I don't know,
It's cool,
Pink
but
or
you know,
Shakira, why are people listening to Cardi B? You know?
Well,
right.
But Pink and Shakira have been around for like a long time.
I'm
So-
sorry, I'm not very current on the state of pop music.
Yeah.
No, but your point is quite, you know,
Yeah, I agree
quite
with that.
on point. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, man.
Well, guys, I think it's probably about wrap-up time here. Real quick, I want to ask you guys a question. What was the first CD you ever bought?
I love this question, Chris.
Oh, jeez. Man, I don't even remember. One of the first albums that I bought on CD would have been Metallica's Black Album.
Nice.
And
Tim.
I'm sure I bought something before that, but I don't remember.
Yeah. It's perfect. I bought Tom Petty. I think it's called Into the Great Wide Open. Well, that's the song. I don't remember the title. Whoops. Anyway, of the CD, but it has Into the Great Wide Open and Learning to Fly, and that was my
That's a great album.
absolutely first record or CD. You know.
CD.
What a good one to start with.
Yeah, you know, and it's sonically just super impressive and simple. Yeah. How about you, Marshall?
Tragic Kingdom, no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, that's a good one.
That was my first
Yeah.
CD.
Oh wow, yeah.
I remember walking around with a little Discman in my backpack because I didn't have anybody to take me to school, so I would walk, and I'd put this thing in my backpack, and you try and walk a little gingerly so you don't make it skip, you know.
Yeah. You know, that was a really good album, and they had a solid band, and so my sister was super into ska. I mean, all those, gosh, the Skeletones, and I can't remember
Real
what
Big
all those.
Fish.
Yeah, Real Big.
Some
All that
Oh, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I couldn't.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't stand it. I'd hear it coming from the room next to me. I'm like, ugh.
Oh man,
I was a grumpy old man at 15 years old.
Well, that's what happens.
All
But I
those
had-
horns. What's all these horns?
Yeah, but I have to say
right.
that
I'm just a girl.
No Doubt though was one that I was like, man, this is not bad. They're a great band.
Yeah.
Cool bass player, guitar player that would do something, some cool stuff on there, and
Super great. Yeah, man. Like, yeah. Unbelievable. Like that whole, and the engineering, what's his name? Escaping me. Come on, Chris, you got this.
I don't
Oh, all right. Well, it's just escaping
what's
me.
that?
Anyway,
Was it Tragic Kingdom?
yes. Boy, it's right there on the tip of my tongue, but the tip of my tongue is like apparently buried in my throat.
Okay, we're going to Wikipedia. October 10, 1995.
Yeah. Come on.
Let's see here. Producer Matthew Wilder.
No. That's not who I'm thinking of. Anyway, I don't know. No, I don't think it's that record. I think it's the one after. But anyway, Golden Age of Wireless, Dolby. Oh man, David Suchek. Yes. Dolby was like doing some stuff that none of us even mentioned him. And like super, like on the sidelines impacted all of us. I think, Peter Gabriel, I think,
Yeah.
damn, I mean, to some extent, Genesis or, like,
Do Wagyu with Ozzy, man.
well, there you go.
I just watched. So I don't watch sports. I didn't see it live, but and I guess they cut him off anyways. But
Marshall's trying to wind us down, and we're like, no,
just
we're not having any of it.
I just saw Ozzy's recent performance, which he's not got many left in him, so that was cool.
Yeah, that's cool. All right,
Yeah.
boys. Yeah, let's put a cork in it. We can
No, we're
end you
back
next
on.
week.
We'll continue.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us here in the chat. Be sure to
Yes,
check
indeed.
us out on Facebook, Thru Port Collective on Facebook. Join us there. Yeah. Anything else you guys want to say?
Bye bye, I guess. Enjoyed
All
it,
right.
gentlemen, as always.
Cheers. Thanks again, guys.
Hey, are you doing it or am I?
I was trying to do it. There it goes.